For some, the first signs of spring might be robins bopping around in their yard or flowers finally budding. But for an adventurous few that brave warm, rainy nights, these guys are a surefire sign that spring is on the way. Hello, welcome to Wild Development Studio. My name is Lauren, and I'm on a mission to help you slow down and reconnect with nature. Today, we are going to meet the spotted salamander. Let's dive in. Materials needed for this project: our watercolor paper, outline, pencil, pen, brush, masking tape, watercolor palette and paints, water, paper towel, and a spray bottle. And a little bit more in depth on our supplies, I'm using a Micron number 8 pen. You want to make sure that whatever pen that you're using to outline, it is waterproof, because we're laying down the outline first. If it's not waterproof, once you get it wet, when we go into paint, the ink is going to spread everywhere. The other thing that I'm using is the Lita Art Supply watercolor pad. This is really good for this type of project where we're just laying down essentially one layer of colors. We are going to layer a tiny little bit, but very good paper to use for this project, and it's reasonably priced. Also going to be using Payne's Gray on the majority of the animal that we're painting today. We've got some yellow accents and also some white gouache. We are going to use that to put on top of our animal to help give it the appearance that it is a wet animal, because it's a salamander. For this sketch, I'm going to be using a light box. So I'm going to go ahead and take my outline, place it on top of the light box, and tape it down. Just make sure it stays in place. So I'm going to take a piece of my paper. When you're handling watercolor paper, it is important to remember that you have clean, dry hands. The oils in our hands, if we're touching all over the page, will react with the paint and repel the paint, and you'll see a fingerprint. All right, go ahead and turn the light box on, or if you don't have a light box and you've got a nice sunny day in a window, you can tape your paper up to the window and then tape that page, and you'll be able to see through just like this. Now, on this salamander, he does have a lot of little details. We want to make sure we're focusing on these big spots, and use your reference photo to kind of see where we've got the big spots, and then also where we might be putting in that glaze later of where it's going to look like a shine. Also, right under here is the shadow. So you just want to lightly put that in, and we'll make it so you can barely see it later, because you don't really want an outline of the shadow. You could, and that's fine too. I'm going to do it nice and light so that in theory you're not going to see that pencil line when the shadow is down. And then I'll fast forward through this part. All right, so that is all I'm going to do for the outline here. So you can see not a whole lot. I will leave this up for a second so you can kind of take in. I just did a little bit. This really detailed outline is what I did when I painted a salamander for an auction for the Cincinnati Nature Center. It went home with somebody that really loves salamanders, so I was so happy to hear it went to a really good home. And so like I mapped out where I put every little like glisten and also where I put some of, you can see like some pinks and blues underneath the skin, and just really did lots of layering. So that's kind of gives you a peek inside my mind, and when I'm going in to do a watercolor piece, just how much detail goes into it. But you can keep this for reference for when we go in and do some of those highlights later. But to go in and start painting, this is all we're really going to need. Very simple. Oh, and I will say this is probably one of the hardest pieces on the tutorials so far. So we can make it as simple or as complex and detailed as we like for this piece. Okay, now I'm going to go in with the Micron pen, the waterproof black pen. Remember, we don't want to get that shadow there. All right, now we are ready to dive in and start painting. We're going to do these spots first. They are going to be yellow. I'm just going to make a little puddle of yellow. And then take the wet paint into the dry paper and just lay down that color. So this is the Spotted Salamander. I believe it is the Ohio State salamander. And if you ever get the chance to see one of these guys in person, they are really cool. These guys are my favorite salamander, probably my favorite animal in Ohio. Definitely favorite amphibian in Ohio. So it is about springtime, and spring is when salamanders will start to come out on rainy nights and head to their breeding grounds. So wherever they hatched from, they return to that spot to mate. And you'll have thousands of salamanders heading out. And in some areas, there are signs on the road. These animals don't realize that there's a road. And there'll be signs that say slow down and watch out. Over at East Fork Lake in Ohio, they have signs up, post pictures so you can see, warning drivers to be cautious. And you don't just see salamanders, you see crawdads walking around, you see frogs and toads, all moving about on warm, rainy, late winter. So I've seen them in February before too. Late winter, early spring into May. And they are active. The amphibians will breathe through their skin. I mean, a salamander looks an awful lot like a lizard, but it is an amphibian. They're related to frogs. So amphibian means they go through a metamorphosis phase, metamorphosis phase. So they start off in the larval stage with gills, and they're in the water, and then typically they will grow lungs and become a land-dwelling terrestrial animal. Now, some will stay in the water their entire lives and have permanent gills. So there's, this is science, it's nature. There's always going to be an exception to the rule. We're gonna let this dry. So you can either let it air dry or you can take a heat gun, and I'll show you what that looks like. We'll take our heat gun and blow it dry. You can also use a hair dryer. With these heat guns, I mean, it's in the name, they do get hot. So just watch that you're not burning your paper and you're moving your heat gun around. So my plug is in the other room. So I am going to, or I guess nearest available plug, I'm going to go and dry this off and I'll be right back. I'm going to spray down my Payne's Gray and get a nice tea-like consistency. Because we're going to go in and do the entire body in this light gray, and then we'll go in with a more milky consistency over the top because he is darker on the top than he is on the side of his body and the bottom of his body. Just something I talk a lot about on this channel is counter shading. That's where my little crabby friend comes in handy. So counter shading, they're going to be darker on the top. So when a predator is looking down at them, they blend into the dark parts of maybe the bottom of the ocean or the ground. And on the bottom, it's going to be lighter. So if something is looking up at them, it blends in with, the white clouds and how light it is in the sky. Thank you, Mr. Crabby Friend. So type of camouflage to help them either not be seen by predators or to help them not become prey. All right, I think that should be enough for now. And we'll go in and start painting our salamander. So, and just, we can avoid the eye for now. We'll get that later. And make sure you avoid the yellow spots you just did. So we talked about these guys being amphibians, and they've got the skin that they can retain water and oxygen through. That's why if you see an amphibian in the wild, try and leave it be. If for some reason you have to pick it up, like say it's crossing the road, like during the amphibian migration. So if it's crossing the road and it needs a little help to get out of the road, you want to make sure that you don't have like perfumes and lotions on your hands and your hands are nice and moist, because you don't want to hurt these guys. These guys are amphibians in general, are indicator species. So because their skin is so sensitive, they are sensitive to pollution and things going on in the world around them. And if biologists notice that their numbers are declining, they will study and see what is going on. And if you're interested in amphibians like salamanders and frogs, as salamanders, I'm not sure if they make a noise. Definitely not something that citizen scientists study, like I'm about to tell you. But frogs, definitely, you'll hear them singing in the spring. Is another way. So robins, when I see robins hopping around on the ground, I know it's spring. If I hear spring peepers, I know spring is right around the corner. But there is a citizen scientist program. The citizen scientist programs let just whoever wants to help participate in collecting data. Scientists can't be everywhere in the world, so they rely on other people to help them gather information. So there is, I'm not going to be able to think of the name of it right now, but I will include a little image and I will also tag them where you can go out and record frog noises, or just if you're not recording, you've got like a clipboard and you're marking down what types of frogs that you hear and at what times and things like that. So it is a fun project to be involved with, and frogs all have their different songs that they make. But back to salamanders, because that's what we're painting. This guy is a spotted salamander. It's a pretty large salamander, about anywhere from 4 to 10 inches. You'll find these guys in North America, definitely in Ohio. I'll put a range map in where you can see where they are found in the US. The US has the most salamanders in the world, most species. We don't have the largest, however. The largest salamander is in China, and that's the giant Chinese salamander. And believe it or not, they get to be about, I believe it is 6 feet long, which is just crazy to think about. I'm just adding some clean water. Not really clean. I'm adding some water of the same color of what I'm already painting. Yeah, I'm gonna post some pictures of some giant salamanders. That's just crazy. But the spotted salamander, like you see here, is a mole salamander. So they will burrow in the ground. And there's also salamanders that live primarily in the water. Your aquatic variety. And our background noises today are of a creek. Couldn't bring myself to do ocean sounds when we are working with something that cannot live in the salt water. So we went with creek noises. You will find salamanders in creeks. When they're laying their eggs, typically they will do that in areas where their young are going to be safe. So that's going to be like in vernal pools. A vernal pool is temporary, usually in the springtime when the snow is melting and it's raining a little bit more. In areas in fields and by woodland areas, you get these little ponds that will build up, and the salamanders will go lay their eggs there, and then around summertime or so they will eventually dry up. Now, that's important because you're not going to get big predators like fish that live in vernal pools. So it helps to keep their little babies safe. And just being careful around these little spots here. But you get all sorts of sizes and colors of salamanders. You get really pretty bright orange salamanders, which you would think they wouldn't want to be so bright because that might attract predators. Well, usually if something in nature is very bright and pretty, it means I am toxic. And that is the case with the spotted salamander here. Is their defense mechanism is they can secrete a toxic mucus out of their skin and tail, like back of the skin and tail. And that helps to protect them. I really don't like the cold, and it's hard for me to see at night. So I don't like going out at night, especially when it's cold. However, if you ever get a chance to safely observe the salamander migration, I highly recommend it. It is just the absolute coolest thing in the world. We had a little park close to us where we used to live, and it was super handy because once it started raining on late winter, early spring nights, we would just grab our things, a nice flashlight, camera, umbrella, because you are going to get wet. And we'd head out and observe. And some nights we'd see a whole bunch, and some nights not at all. So if we lived in that area longer, I was taking records of what the temperature was like, how heavy the rain was, the date, just so I can try and figure out a rhyme or reason to when these guys were going out. But I guess they are the ones that know best. It's usually the males that will go out first during the migration, and then the females will arrive. And they will lay about 100 jelly-like eggs, sometimes like underneath rocks or on logs. And then I believe it's about 6 months. Wow, not that long. That'd be a long time. About 60 days later, you will get little tadpoles. They kind of look like little fish. And then eventually these little fish, what looks like little fish, start growing legs. And so that's how you know it's a tadpole. And they start losing their tail if they're a frog, but salamanders keep their little tail. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that salamanders keep their tail. If they happen to lose a tail or a limb, say if a predator happens to get a hold of them and they get away, they are able to regenerate or grow that leg or tail back. Now, when we did find these guys over by where we lived, I did put my findings on it's an app related to CCAP. It's iNaturalist. So I put my findings on iNaturalist and I talked to another naturalist in the area. And he asked me if I was able to take that down because the findings go on a map. And unfortunately, I mean, look at how cute this guy is. People will take them out of the wild and sell them in the pet trade. So I have a problem with my passwords usually, so it took me a while to figure out my password, but I was able to take that information down because I didn't want to be the reason that we were losing these guys in our area. And they already have enough trouble as it is when it comes to crossing the roads and pollution. And in fact, it took me so long to figure out my password for that app and which email it was through. I was just emailing iNatural. It's like, hey, this is me. I've got screenshots that it's me. Help me protect this animal and just remove it. I regret putting it out there because there was not an easy way to delete it from the app, which is kind of silly if you ask me, but eventually it did come down. So lesson learned there. All right, so now I'm going to go in with more milky consistency. See how it's a little bit thicker. And go back in the top part of the body. Hopefully without putting my hand in the paint. But it's a pretty easy fix if it happens. I'm going to turn it upside down so I don't get my hand in the paint again. All right, I might speed this part up so I can focus on getting this darker part up here. Oh, but you guys let me know in the comments. Do you like painting along in real time, even if I'm being quiet? Or I'm going to bring the darkness down just a little bit. So if you paint with me in real time, then you get kind of the goings on inside my brain on why I do certain things. And try and explain as I'm going as often as possible. That's hard to do. I remember being in grade school. Let me know if you guys had this at your school. And the teacher gave us a project. I mean, this was like early on in grade school. And the project was to explain step by step how you were making something. And I think I did like how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I thought it was fun, but also, I don't want to say tedious because I enjoy teaching painting. I enjoy spreading knowledge of really cool animals. I mean, all animals are cool, let's face it. I enjoy spreading knowledge about animals. I enjoy teaching painting and trying to make that more accessible for everyone. So, especially painting and animals together, because we learn a lot about animals through observing and slowing down and taking the time to study them. Because if you're following along on the page for any length of time, you hear me talking about countershading, you're going to start noticing that out in the wild a little bit more. Where you're going to notice, the spots on the animal, or that it's got shiny skin, and that means it's an amphibian and it's not scaly like a lizard. So you really start noticing things because of art. And that hand-eye coordination, it helps you to remember. So, what was the point of my story? The point of my story is, okay, I'm not gonna lie, I did not enjoy that assignment of teaching people how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But I am ADHD, so usually you have to really enjoy and be passionate about something to be engaged. So I enjoy painting and animals and teaching people about animals. That was my favorite thing when I worked with animals and being a animal experience specialist, is if you're holding something like a baby gator, don't just pick up baby gators. I don't promote that. But if you're in a setting where you have the correct license and permits and all that stuff. But I enjoyed holding something that people thought was typically scary and explaining to them why it's not, and then seeing them go from fear to awe and wonder to appreciation, and also wanting to help that animal and teach other people about that animal. I mean, that's what it's all about. So, while I don't enjoy teaching people how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I love doing this. And it did take me a really long time to finally make YouTube videos, or even put my face in front of the camera on short form videos, because the internet's a scary place. People are all very critical. And I don't know, I think they get a false sense of security. I'm going to go in kind of on the side of my brush so that it's naturally blends out a little bit around the nose. I'm also not going to go in around the eye because it is a little bit lighter right around that eye there. The people are all very critical on the internet, and also they hide behind their keyboard. Like, I never say anything online that I wouldn't say directly to somebody's face, and that should just be a rule in general. If you can't look somebody in the eye and tell them, I think what you're doing is ugly, or I think you're wrong because of X, Y, and Z, then you should just sit down and not say anything. Let's just be nice to each other. Just adding a little bit of shadow on the eye over there, leaving some highlight so it doesn't get completely lost. Add a little bit more right underneath the eye. And maybe over here a little bit. But yeah, long rant short. Point being, let me know for future videos if you want me to speed things up when I'm painting, or if you want me to paint in real time to get a feel for what's going on inside my brain. Sometimes I don't even know what's going on inside my brain. I'm going to add a little bit of shadow right behind his arm here. Kind of helping the paint move out a little bit, kind of give the illusion of a shadow. And also he's got this little fold right here. If you look on that reference photo up close along the body, I mean, we don't have the rest of the body here, but they've got these cute little rolls. I think we just got like just the one right here. And it's still kind of wet, so I'm gonna let that dry a little bit, but I am gonna go in and add a little bit of shadow underneath this roll or fold. And a little bit under here and underneath his jaw. The salamanders are a pretty chill species. I don't think I know if anybody's ever been bit by a salamander. I'm looking at the mouth. That's why I'm thinking about that. And then thinking about the time I helped, I believe it was a Cuban tree frog cross the road. And I'm pretty sure this is my husband's favorite story. And my son was itty bitty. He was still in a car seat. So we see this frog in the road. It was in a parking lot, but I still wanted him out of the road. And I was trying to help him out. So my husband, he's in the car, headlights are on, so I can see this frog. And I walk over to it, and I kid you not, it turns his head to look directly at me, opens his mouth, and lunges at my face. And I scream and run in terror. Oh my. So I feel personally attacked and violated by this frog, but he probably felt attacked and violated by me. He didn't know I was trying to help him out. But now I'm always a little cautious when I'm helping a frog cross the road. That was not even as scary as there was one time I helped a snapping turtle cross the road. Well, and by road, I mean it was maybe 6 lanes of a highway. I do not promote or suggest that at all. Don't do that, kids. It's not safe. But it was on 4th of July and there was no traffic. And it was very, very safe. And I hit a turtle snapping at me. That's the thing when you start caring about animals. Sometimes you gotta maybe get lunged at by a turtle. Or not a turtle. By a Cuban frog. Adding a little shadow underneath his chin. And kind of along the mouth here. Uh-oh, my creak sounds are done. Let me pull them up. The creek sounds I recorded at Salt Fork Lake and then uploaded it to my podcast. And that's all it is. It's about a half hour of just creek noises. I also have beach sounds and birds, kind of to replicate those CDs that were really popular in the 90s, were just like nature sounds. Someday I'm going to record whale sounds because that was my favorite one growing up, was the whale sounds. That always used to help me fall asleep when I was a kid. So I still want this area to dry, and I'm waiting for this pen to dry. It is waterproof, but you have to make sure it's dry, otherwise it will bleed. So since I have some light tea-like consistency paint right here, I am going to go in and do that shadow underneath the body. And when I do shadows, I like to lay down kind of a flat wash, all the same color, and then get a little bit darker. And while it's wet, go in right along the body and let it bloom out, because that, in theory, when you're looking at a shadow, right along the body is where it's going to be the darkest, and then just kind of fade out. This paper dries so quick, so I'm just wetting it down a little bit more. That's why you practice, so you really get a feel for the materials that you have. I think that shadow really helps to make it seem like that animal is on the page. That spot is just taking forever to dry. So while I have that shadow color, and now that that's dry, going in and doing the eyeball. Always when I do the eyeball, I lay down a light to medium shade first. And then, while it's still wet, Boop, boop, boop. While it's still wet, I'm going to go in with a darker value of the same color paint. A darker value of the same color paint, if I pick up enough, and go back and just lay a thin strip along the eye and let it bloom in. And if I was doing like a piece like the commission piece where I'm using lots of details, I'd go in a couple times and do this. But we're doing a nice, easy piece. That gives a more natural look to the eye. It was a little bit lighter than I wanted right towards the center there. So I'm gonna let it dry and then I'll do a wash over it in a little bit. And now that this is mostly dry, I'm gonna pick up some thick paint and add that little detail, that roll in there. And also that one right there. I'm gonna just add one right along here. You can use your reference photo and decide if you want to add the little detail or not. Yours does not have to look exactly like mine. Get another tea-like consistency and just go in. I'm just going to go in and redo the eye. How about that? It was just a little too light for my liking. If you're happy with your eye, you can leave it alone. And then going in with the darker value and right along the edge. And kind of doing little flicks in towards the black part of the eye. All right, now we're just gonna let that dry and the eyeball and that, oh, so I did the little nostril there. He does have a little line that goes around the top. So I'm gonna do that in the darker value, just a little, now that I'm holding the paper like this, it's gonna be a little C shape right over top. I'm gonna have a little bit of a gap between the nostril and where you see that line. I'm gonna take some white gouache. And we're gonna go in and add some highlights. So right along the top of the mouth here, we'll add a little highlight. And right around here. He's already kind of got a highlight there. I'm not going to go in around the eye just yet because it is still very wet. And over by the nose, he's got a little, you just kind of wiggle it around a bit. And lifting a little bit if it's too dark. But these little highlights are going to help it make it look like he's got some wet, shiny skin. Now that that's dry, in between the nostril and where I put that little black line, I'm just doing a tiny little highlight so it doesn't get lost. I'm also going to add a little spot right there. And along the legs, you can add a couple little spots. You can use your outline that you have as reference. So all these tiny little spots can be suggestions of where his skin is shiny. And the white gouache does tend to dry a little bit lighter. So you can go over it a couple times if you like. Now you could just areas that you wanted it to be highlighted or look like it's wet and shiny, you could just leave that area light and let the white of the paper do its thing. But because he's kind of shiny looking over the yellow and the black, I like doing it with the gouache. And you could use a lighter hue or value of the yellow and the gray, but I think the white gouache makes for a really neat effect. And just be careful, especially on the paper that I'm using. Yours might be a little bit different. If you go over it too much, you will start to lift the paint. So just a real quick dab. But you can still see through and you can see the yellow and the gray underneath there. And I think it makes for a neat effect. I do want to make it lighter above the eye. Be careful not to touch the eye, but just right at the very top. Adding a highlight and down here a little bit of highlight. Some of them are a little too dark, so I'm just blending them out a little bit. Don't overwork your page. And you can do the little spots where you see it on the salamander, on the outline, or you can have fun with it. Kind of go wild and crazy. All right. I'm going to take a hair dryer and make this eye dry so that we can add some of the highlights to the eye, and then we'll be done. All right, now that the eye is dry, the spots where we've got some highlight right here, and right here. So 1, 2, 3, and then a little bit on the corner. good. He's got a little bit of a highlight going down here. I feel like we kind of lost the highlights along the mouth because it was a little bit lighter, so I'm just gonna add that in again. Take some Payne's Gray and redefine that mouth a little bit. And I'm also going to take some Payne's Gray and just go along the top of the eye here. And there you have it. We have our spotted salamander. Congratulations on finishing your salamander painting. Make sure that you sign your piece. It's never complete until it is signed. Once you've signed it, no more going back and retouching it. It is done. Now, if you've learned something today about painting or about salamanders, let it inspire you to do something for nature today. If you've painted this, I would love to see what you did. Tag me at Wild Development Studio or email me at wilddevelopmentstudio@gmail.com, and I will shout you out on my Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok pages. And until next time, get outside, see what develops, and stay wild.